I grew up in a house where money wasn't just tight, it was a constant grinding presence, like a low hum you couldn't escape. My father, Leon, worked double shifts at a packaging warehouse in eastern Pennsylvania, and my mother, Frances, cleaned houses 6 days a week. We lived in a 2-bedroom rental in a town called Millbrook, the kind of place where the factory smokestacks defined the skyline, and college felt like a myth told to someone else's kids. I was 17 when everything fell apart. But before that, before the night that split my life into before and after, I was just a kid who loved music more than breathing. My name is Ezra Crawford, and I need you to understand what music meant to me, because without that, the rest of this won't make sense. I didn't choose music. It chose me. When I was 11, my uncle, my father's younger brother who'd done a stint in Nashville before addiction brought him back home, left his old acoustic guitar at our place during one of his longer disappearances. My parents stuck it in the corner of the living room, and for weeks I'd walk past it, this battered thing with worn frets and a crack running along the body. Then one afternoon, home alone, I picked it up. I don't remember deciding to. I remember my fingers finding the strings, the way the wood felt warm against my chest, the shocking intimacy of that first strum. It sounded terrible, discordant, clumsy, all wrong. But underneath the noise, I heard possibility. I heard something that felt like it had been waiting for me. Within a year I could play. Not well, not like the professionals I'd watch on YouTube at the public library, but well enough that sound became shape, became feeling, became the only language I truly understood. My parents didn't get it. They'd hear me practicing in our cramped living room and exchange looks that said they were worried I was wasting time on dreams we couldn't afford. "Music's nice, Ezra," my mother would say, her voice gentle but firm, "but it doesn't pay bills." She was right, of course, but she was also wrong in the way only someone who's never felt that particular hunger can be wrong. Music wasn't about paying bills. It was about having a reason to wake up in a town where the future felt pre-written in dead-end jobs and quiet resignation. By the time I started at Millbrook Regional High School, I'd taught myself 3 instruments: guitar, piano, and passable drums. I wrote songs constantly, filling notebooks with lyrics that were probably terrible but felt like excavating pieces of my soul. I didn't play for audiences. I didn't even really play for myself. I played because not playing felt like suffocation. Millbrook Regional was the kind of high school that existed in the shadow of better places. It served 3 towns, pulling in kids from varying degrees of poverty and working-class struggle. The building itself was a sprawling brick structure from the 1970s, all fluorescent lighting and beige walls, with a crumbling football field and a gym that smelled perpetually of old sweat and floor wax. The social hierarchy was rigid and predictable. At the top were the athletes, football players primarily, though basketball had its adherents, followed by the theater kids who somehow managed to be both outcasts and celebrated, then a muddled middle of average students, and finally the bottom tier where kids like me lived. The ones who didn't fit anywhere, who ate lunch alone or in small defensive clusters. I was a junior when Reed Jameson transferred in. Reed was different from the start. He'd moved from somewhere in Connecticut, one of those places with old money and country clubs, and while his family had clearly fallen on harder times, his dad had taken a management job at the local plastics plant, there was still something polished about him. He had the confidence of someone who'd once belonged to better rooms, who knew how to smile and make eye contact and navigate social situations like they were games with rules he'd mastered. We became friends by accident. I was in the music room during lunch. I spent most free periods there with Mr. Hudson North, the only teacher who seemed to understand that for some of us, Music wasn't an elective, but a lifeline, and Reed wandered in, looking lost. "This where the music stuff happens?" he asked, leaning against the door frame with studied casualness. "Yeah," I said, not looking up from the piano where I was working through a chord progression that kept eluding me. "You any good?" I shrugged. "Depends on your definition." He laughed at that, a genuine sound that surprised me. "Fair enough. I'm Reed. Just started this week." "Ezra, can I listen?" That should have been my first warning. The easy charm, the way he positioned himself as interested but not needy, curious but not committed. But I was 17 and lonely, and I'd spent most of high school invisible. Having someone want to hear me play felt like vindication. I played for him. A song I'd written called Concrete Roots, about growing up in a town that taught you to keep your head down and your expectations lower. When I finished, Reed was quiet for a long moment. Fuck, man. That was really good." "Thanks," I said, embarrassed by how much his approval meant. "You should perform that, like, publicly." I laughed. "Where? The cafeteria?" "The talent show. It's in April. Huge deal here, apparently. Whole town shows up." I'd heard about the talent show, Millbrook Regional's annual spring event, held in the auditorium with tickets sold to raise money for the arts program. It was the one night where the school pretended to care about creativity, where students could perform music, comedy, dance, whatever they wanted. Winners got scholarships, recognition, sometimes even attention from local media. "I don't perform in front of people," I told Reed. "Why not?" "Because," I struggled to articulate it, "because it matters too much. If I do it and it's bad, that says something real about me. If I don't do it, I can still believe I'm good enough." Reed nodded slowly, like he understood something important. "Fear of failure versus fear of irrelevance. I get it. But you know what's worse than failing? Never knowing." We became close after that. Reed had a way of making friendship feel inevitable, like we'd been meant to find each other. He started eating lunch with me in the music room. He'd ask about my songs, my influences, what I was working on. He introduced me to people, not the popular kids, but the tier just below them, students who existed in that middle ground of social acceptance. And he introduced me to Sierra Linton. Sierra was a senior, a year ahead of us, with dark hair she wore in a perpetual ponytail, and eyes that seemed to catalog everything. She wasn't conventionally beautiful. Her features were too sharp, her frame too angular, but she had presence. When she walked into a room, you noticed. When she spoke, people listened. She was in the theater program, one of those students who could sing well enough and act passably enough to land leading roles in the school's modest productions. She'd played Maria in West Side Story the previous fall, and while I hadn't seen it, I'd heard people talk about her performance with a mixture of admiration and resentment. Reed brought her to the music room one afternoon in February. "Sierra, this is Ezra. Ezra, Sierra. Sierra's thinking about doing something musical for the talent show, and I told her she had to hear you play." Sierra looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Reed says you're talented." "Reed exaggerates," I said. "Play something," she said, settling onto one of the folding chairs. "Prove him right or wrong." I played Concrete Roots again. I'd been playing it a lot lately, refining it, smoothing out the rough edges. When I finished, Sierra was silent for a long moment. "That's really personal," she finally said. "Most good music is. You ever think about singing it for other people?" "Not really my thing." "Why not?" I was getting tired of that question. "Because I don't need an audience to validate what I do." "That's either very confident or very scared," Sierra said. "I can't tell which." "Maybe both," Reed offered, smiling. Sierra came back the next day, and the day after that. Within a week, she was a regular presence in the music room, sitting with Reed and me during lunch, listening to me work through songs, offering occasional comments that were always pointed and usually right. "Your lyrics are good," she told me once, "but you bury them. You're afraid of being too direct, so you hide behind metaphor." "Metaphor is the point," I argued. "Sometimes. But sometimes you just need to say what you mean. People respond to honesty." I started to look forward to seeing her. Not romantically, not at first. She was just there, present, engaged in a way that made my music feel like it mattered to someone besides me. Reed noticed, of course. "You like her," he said one afternoon after Sierra had left to get to her next class. "She's cool," I said carefully. "You should ask her out." "Why would I do that?" "Because you light up when she's around. Because she clearly likes you. Because you're 17 and you deserve to stop being alone all the time." "I'm not alone. I have you. I'm your friend, man. But you need more than that. You need someone who sees you the way Sierra does." I didn't ask Sierra out, but somehow, over the next few weeks, we became something. Not officially. There was no defining conversation, no dramatic moment. We just started spending more time together. She'd wait for me after school, and we'd walk to the public library where I'd do homework while she rehearsed lines. On weekends, she'd come over to my house, and we'd sit in my tiny bedroom listening to music, talking about everything and nothing. My parents liked her. My mother especially seemed relieved that I'd found someone, as if having a girlfriend proved I was normal, was on track, wasn't going to spend my life as some weird loner who talked to guitars. Reed was always around. The three of us became a unit, Reed, Sierra, and me. Looking back, I can see how calculated it was, how carefully Reed positioned himself at the center. But at the time, it just felt like friendship, like finally belonging somewhere. In late March, Reed brought up the talent show again. We were in the music room, the three of us, and Reed was watching me play with that expression he got sometimes, the one that looked like he was solving a puzzle. "You need to perform at the talent show," he said. "I already told you. I know what you told me. But that was before. You're different now. You've been working on new material. Sierra and I both think you're ready." I looked at Sierra. "You think I should do this?" She nodded. "I do. I think you're ready. I think people need to hear what you can do." "What if I fail?" "Then you fail," she said simply. "But at least you'll know. At least you'll have tried." "Besides," Reed added, "you won't be alone up there. Sierra's performing too, right?" "I'm doing a scene from Streetcar," Sierra confirmed. "But that's different. That's someone else's words." "And this would be me," I said slowly, understanding what I was admitting to. My words, my music, everything that matters to me on display. "Exactly," Reed said, and his smile was so genuine, so full of what looked like authentic friendship, that I felt my resistance crumbling. "That's why it matters. That's why you have to do it." I agreed. Of course I agreed, because I was 17 and desperate to believe that my music could mean something to someone besides me. Because Sierra was looking at me like I was capable of something important. Because Reed's confidence felt like a lifeline in a world that had taught me to expect nothing. The talent show was scheduled for April 28th, a Friday night. I had 5 weeks to prepare. The preparation period should have been exciting. Instead, it felt increasingly like walking toward something I couldn't quite see, something that made my stomach twist every time I thought too hard about it. Reed became obsessive about the performance. He'd show up at my house with ideas, suggestions, critiques. He wanted me to play Concrete Roots, but also debut a new song, something even more personal, even more raw. "You need to make them feel something," he'd say. "You need to make them understand who you are." I wrote a new song in 3 days. I called it "The Weight of Wings," a title Sierra suggested, and it was about the impossible dream of escape, about having ambitions that felt ridiculous given where you came from. It was the most honest thing I'd ever written, and playing it made my chest ache with a vulnerability I wasn't sure I could handle. "That's the one," Reed said when I played it for him. "That's what you open with." Open with? I thought I'd do concrete roots first, ease into it. No. Start with vulnerability, start with truth, then give them concrete roots when they're already invested. It made sense. Reed had a way of making everything make sense. Sierra was supportive, but increasingly distant. She was busy with her own preparation, she said, and with college applications and senior year responsibilities. But sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher, something that might have been pity or regret or calculation. "Are you okay?" I asked her one afternoon in early April. We were alone in the music room. Reed had started skipping lunch sometimes, said he had things to take care of, and Sierra seemed more withdrawn than usual. "I'm fine," she said, "just stressed." About the talent show? About everything, the future, what comes next. You and me both. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for just a second I thought she might say something important. But then Reed appeared in the doorway, all bright energy and plans, and the moment passed. 2 weeks before the talent show, Reed made a suggestion that should have set off every alarm I had. "You should dedicate the performance to Sierra," he said. We were in my bedroom, and he was lying on my floor, scrolling through his phone while I practiced. "What?" "The performance. You should dedicate it to her. Tell everyone she inspired you, that she's the reason you found the courage to perform." "Why would I do that?" "Because it's true, isn't it? You weren't going to do this before you met her." "I guess, but—" "And because it'll mean something. To her and to the audience. It'll give the performance context. Make it more than just songs." "I don't know, man. That feels too personal." "Music is personal. That's the whole point. I practiced the dedication. Reed coached me on it, helped me find the right words. I want to dedicate this performance to someone special, I'd say. To Sierra Linton, who showed me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act anyway. This is for you." It sounded good when I practiced it alone. It sounded less good every time I thought about actually saying it in front of hundreds of people. 1 week before the show, Sierra broke up with me. We were at her house, in her bedroom. Her parents worked late, so we had privacy, and she'd been quiet all afternoon. Finally, she turned to me and said, "I think we should take a break." The words didn't compute at first. "A break? I'm graduating in a month. I'll be leaving for college. Long distance doesn't work, and I don't want to spend my last weeks here, tied to something that has an expiration date. So that's it? We just stop? It's better this way. Clean break, no drama. Sierra, I don't understand. What changed?" She wouldn't look at me. "Nothing changed. That's the problem. I'm moving forward and you're still figuring things out. That's okay. But I can't wait for you." I left her house feeling hollowed out. I called Reed on the walk home, and he met me at the park near school. "She dumped me," I told him, still not quite believing it. "Fuck," Reed said, and he sounded genuinely upset. "Man, I'm sorry. That's really shitty timing. I can't do the performance now. I can't stand up there and dedicate songs to someone who just dumped me." "Hey, no, listen to me." Reed gripped my shoulders, made me look at him. "You are not backing out. You've worked too hard for this. And you know what? This makes it even better." "How does this make it better?" "Because now it's real. Now when you sing about pain and struggle and not being enough, people will feel it. They'll see it in you. Art comes from pain, Ezra. You know that. I don't know if I can—" "You can, and you will. And because you're not doing this for Sierra. You're doing this for yourself. You're doing it because you're talented and you deserve to be heard. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Just one thing, Reed said carefully. Don't change the dedication. What? Why would I keep the dedication to her? Because it'll show strength. It'll show you're above the petty shit. It'll show that you can honor what she meant to you even if she couldn't see it through. That's maturity. That's dignity. Reed, that's insane. People will think you're classy. People will respect it. Trust me. I should have said no. I should have walked away from the whole thing, but I was 17 and heartbroken and desperate to believe that the pain could mean something, could be transformed into art, could matter. I said yes. The final week before the talent show was a blur of practice and panic. I ran through both songs until my fingers ached and my voice went hoarse. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, rehearsing the dedication, trying to make it sound genuine, trying to convince myself this wasn't the stupidest decision I'd ever made. My parents noticed something was wrong. You seem stressed, my mother said the Wednesday before the show. We were eating dinner, spaghetti with jar sauce, the kind of meal that stretched protein thin and filled stomachs cheap, and I'd barely touched my plate. Just nervous about Friday, I said. The talent show? My father looked up from his food. You're really going through with that? Yeah. Why? He asked, and there was genuine confusion in his voice. What's the point? The point is I'm good at this. The point is it matters to me. Mattering doesn't pay rent, son. You need to focus on things that lead somewhere. This could lead somewhere, I said, hating how defensive I sounded. Where? You gonna be a rock star? Move to Nashville like my brother did? Come back 3 years later strung out. And broken? Leon, my mother said quietly, a warning. I'm just saying the kid needs to be realistic. Music's a hobby. It's not a future. I left the table and went to my room. I could hear them arguing in low voices, my mother defending me in her careful way, my father insisting he was just being practical. They both meant well. They both had no idea who I actually was. Reed called around 10 that night. You good? He asked. Yeah, just family stuff. They don't get it? Not even a little. That's why Friday matters, Reed said. That's why you have to kill it. Show them. Show everyone. What if I freeze? What if I get up there and my mind goes blank? Then you push through. You've practiced enough that your hands will know what to do, even if your brain shuts down. Trust the work. Easy for you to say, you're not the one performing. I wish I was, Reed said, and he sounded sincere. I wish I had what you have, but I don't. So I get to live vicariously through you. Don't let me down, man. After we hung up, I sat on my bed holding my guitar, running through the chord progressions for The Weight of Wings. The song was about feeling trapped, about having dreams that felt impossible. I'd written it thinking about my life, my town, my future. But sitting there in the dark, I realized it was also about this moment, about standing on the edge of something terrifying and not knowing if jumping would lead to flight or falling. I saw Sierra twice that week. Once in the hallway at school, where she smiled at me with that careful, distant expression people use when they're trying to be kind while maintaining boundaries. Once in the parking lot, where she was getting into Reed's car. When had she started riding with Reed? And she waved at me like we were casual acquaintances who'd never shared anything important. Is Sierra riding with you now? I asked Reed on Thursday, the day before the show. Sometimes her car's been acting up. Why? Just seems weird. You never mentioned it. Didn't think it mattered. We're all still friends, right? Right, I said, but something about it felt wrong. Something about all of it felt wrong. Thursday night, I barely slept. I lay in bed running through every possible disaster scenario, forgetting lyrics, breaking a string, my voice cracking, the audience laughing, Sierra looking at me with pity, my parents' disappointed faces when I confirmed everything they believed about music being a waste of time. At some point in the early morning hours, I made a decision. I wasn't going to do the dedication. I'd tell Reed I changed my mind, that it felt wrong, that I needed to just play the songs and let them speak for themselves. I felt better having decided that. Clear-headed. Like I'd avoided some trap I couldn't quite see but could definitely sense. I should have trusted that instinct. Friday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt like mockery, warm sun, clear skies, the whole world bright and oblivious to my impending humiliation. I found Reed before first period. "I'm not doing the dedication," I told him. He frowned. "What? Why not?" "Because it feels wrong. Because Sierra and I aren't together anymore. Because I want the music to stand on its own." "Ezra, listen to me." Reed pulled me aside, his voice low and urgent. "I get why you're scared. But backing out of the dedication now, after everything, it'll look weak. It'll look like you're still hung up on her, like you can't handle your own emotions. I am hung up on her, and I can't handle my emotions. That's the truth. But you don't show that truth on stage. On stage, you're strong. You're above it. The dedication isn't about Sierra. It's about you being big enough to acknowledge what she meant, regardless of how things ended. Reed, 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes of discomfort for something that could change your life. You've worked too hard to chicken out now over a couple sentences. I wanted to argue. I wanted to stand firm. But Reed had this way of making cowardice look like wisdom, of making self-destruction look like courage. And I was tired and scared and desperate to believe that someone understood what I was trying to do. "Fine," I said. "I'll do the dedication." "That's my man." Reed clapped me on the shoulder. "You're going to crush this tonight. I believe in you." The school day dragged. Classes blurred together. Teachers talked. Students responded. The machinery of education ground forward. And I sat in the middle of it, feeling like I was already somewhere else, already on that stage, facing judgment. Sierra found me at lunch. I was in the music room naturally, running through The Weight of Wings one more time. "You're going to be great tonight," she said from the doorway. I stopped playing. "You think so?" "I know so. I've heard you practice. You're really talented, Ezra." "Is that why you broke up with me? Because I'm talented?" She flinched. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is you dumping me a week before I'm supposed to pour my heart out in front of the entire school. I'm sorry about the timing, but it wouldn't have been better later, and you'll see, this is the right thing, for both of us." She left before I could respond. I sat there holding my guitar, feeling the weight of everything I couldn't say, couldn't fix, couldn't understand. The talent show started at 7. Doors opened at 6:30. I arrived at 6, guitar in hand, feeling like I was walking to my own execution. The auditorium was the largest space in the school, a theater-style room with maybe 600 seats that also served for assemblies and graduation. The stage was deep, with heavy red curtains and professional lighting that the theater kids had spent all afternoon adjusting. Behind the curtain, a dozen performers milled around. Singers, dancers, comedians, musicians. The energy was a mixture of excitement and terror. Reed found me backstage. "You're on 7th, he said. "Right after intermission, prime spot." "Great," I said, not feeling great about anything. "Sierra's on 3rd, before intermission." "Okay." "She's going to kill it, but you're going to be better." "Reed, I don't know if I can do this." "Yes, you can. You're going to walk out there, dedicate the performance to Sierra, play 2 of the best songs this school has ever heard, and walk off to applause. That's what's going to happen." "How do you know?" "Because I know you. Because I've heard you play. Because you're better than you think you are." I wanted to believe him. In that moment, Standing backstage, with my heart trying to climb out of my chest, I needed to believe him more than I'd ever needed anything. The show started. I watched from the wings as performers took the stage one by one. A girl sang a Taylor Swift cover. A guy did stand-up comedy that got scattered laughs. A dance crew performed a routine. That was more enthusiasm than skill. Then Sierra took the stage. She'd chosen a monologue from A Streetcar Named Desire, Blanche's famous, "I have always depended on the kindness of strangers" speech. She performed it well, hitting the emotional beats with precision, her voice carrying to the back of the auditorium. The audience applauded warmly when she finished. She came off stage and walked right past me without making eye contact. Intermission lasted 15 minutes. I spent them in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, trying to convince myself I was ready. When I came back, Reed was waiting. "You're up in 2 acts," he said. "I know. Remember the dedication. Look right at her when you say it. Make it personal." "Where is she sitting?" "Front row center, hard to miss." Of course she was. Front row center, where she'd have to watch me dedicate 2 deeply personal songs to her in front of everyone we knew. "Reed, this feels wrong. That's just nerves. Push. Through." The act before mine finished. A magic show that got polite applause, and then the student MC, Landon Benson, took the mic. "Our next performer is Junior Ezra Crawford, making his first appearance on this stage. Ezra is going to be playing 2 original songs for us. Let's give him a warm Millbrook welcome." The curtain opened. The lights hit my face, hot and blinding. I walked to center stage, guitar in hand, and stood in front of the microphone. 600 people looked back at me. I found Sierra in the front row, exactly where Reed said she'd be. She was sitting between 2 of her theater friends, and her expression was carefully neutral. This was my last chance to change course, to skip the dedication, play the songs, leave with dignity. I opened my mouth and said exactly what Reed had coached me to say. "I want to dedicate this performance to someone special," I said, and my voice sounded strange in the speakers, too loud and too exposed. "To Sierra Linton, who showed me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act anyway. Sierra, even though things didn't work out between us, you made me believe I was worth listening to. This is for you." I don't know what I expected. Applause, maybe? Sympathetic murmurs? Sierra looking touched or embarrassed or something human. What I didn't expect was her face going pale, her mouth forming a small shocked "oh," or the way she immediately looked at Reed, who was standing in the wing stage right, and shook her head slightly, desperately. What I definitely didn't expect was for Sierra to stand up in the middle of 600 people and say, loud enough for the microphone to catch, "Don't." The auditorium went silent. "Sierra," I said, confused. She walked toward the stage, and now I could see she was crying. Not gentle tears, but the kind of crying that comes from panic and shame and something breaking. "I'm sorry," she said, and everyone could hear her. "Ezra, I'm so sorry. I can't let you do this. I can't let you humiliate yourself." "What are you talking about? Reed and I..." She was sobbing now, words coming out in broken fragments. "We've been together for 3 weeks, since before I broke up with you. This whole thing, the dedication, the performance, you being here, it was Reed's idea. He wanted to humiliate you. He wanted everyone to see you dedicate songs to me right before I told everyone the truth." The words hit me like physical blows. I looked at Reed in the wings, and he wasn't looking at Sierra. He was looking at me, and his expression was disappointment, like she'd ruined something he'd carefully planned. "That's not..." I started, but Sierra kept talking. "He made me do it. He said it would be funny. He said you deserved it for thinking you were special. But I can't. I can't watch you stand there and pour your heart out when I know what's waiting. I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. The auditorium erupted. Gasps, exclamations. The rising tide of 600 people processing the same information simultaneously. I stood there under the lights, guitar in my hands, unable to move or think or breathe. Someone in the audience laughed, then someone else, then more, until the laughter built into a wave of sound that seemed to physically push me backward. Ezra? Mr. North's voice came from backstage. Ezra, you should come down. I couldn't move. I stood frozen, watching Sierra cry, watching Reed in the wings, looking annoyed that his plan had fallen apart, watching 600 people who now knew I was the idiot who'd believed his best friend and ex-girlfriend had his best interests at heart. Finally, I walked off stage. The curtain closed behind me. The audience was still talking, still processing. I walked past Reed without looking at him, past Mr. North, who tried to say something comforting, past the other performers who were staring at me with mixture of pity and schadenfreude. I walked out of the auditorium, out of the school, into the parking lot where my father's beat-up Civic waited. I put my guitar in the back seat and sat in the driver's seat, even though I couldn't drive yet, didn't have a license, had never needed one because everything in my life was walking distance from everything else. I sat there until the talent show ended, until cars started filing out of the parking lot, until my phone, which I'd left on silent, showed 17 missed calls from my parents and 5 texts from Reed. Reed's texts were what I expected. I didn't think she'd break. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Call me, we can fix this. You're overreacting, don't be dramatic. I deleted them all and drove home. Illegally, dangerously, crying so hard I could barely see the road. I didn't crash. Sometimes I wish I had. My parents were waiting in the living room. The look on my mother's face when I walked in told me she'd already heard. Small towns, word travels faster than light. Ezra, she said, standing up. Don't, I told her. Just don't. I went to my room and closed the door. I lay on my bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. Saturday morning, I woke up to find that someone had posted video of the whole thing online. All of it. My dedication, Sierra's breakdown, the laughter. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. Hundreds of strangers and classmates alike dissecting my humiliation, making jokes, turning my pain into entertainment. By Sunday, it had spread beyond Millbrook. The video had been shared to multiple platforms. People I'd never met were commenting on it, analyzing it, creating memes from screenshots of my face when Sierra started crying. Monday, I didn't go to school. My parents didn't fight me on it. Tuesday, I forced myself to go back. I lasted until third period. The stares, the whispers, the way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. I couldn't handle it. I walked out during the class, changed and never went back. My parents tried to convince me to return. Mr. North called the house, said he wanted to help, said I shouldn't let this define me. But he didn't understand. This wasn't about the humiliation, though that was real enough. This was about the fact that I'd been so fundamentally wrong about people I'd trusted, about Reed, who I'd considered my best friend, about Sierra, who I'd loved in the clumsy, all-in way 17-year-olds love. I'd been wrong about everything. The school offered me the option to finish the year through correspondence courses. My mother handled the paperwork. I stopped leaving the house except to walk at night when I knew I wouldn't see anyone. My guitar sat in the corner of my room. I didn't touch it for 6 weeks. Summer came, and with it the realization that I couldn't hide forever. My family needed money. We'd always needed money, but now with my father's hours being cut at the warehouse, some corporate efficiency initiative, that meant fewer jobs and more automation, the financial pressure became crushing. I got a job at a fast food restaurant called Burger Haven on the east side of town. I worked closing shifts, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., cleaning grills and mopping floors and taking out trash that smelled like despair. The job paid $8 an hour, which was better than nothing, but not by much. My parents didn't talk about the talent show. Nobody talked about it. But it hung there in the house like smoke, impossible to clear. I turned 18 in July. No celebration, no party. Just another day working a shift that left me smelling like fryer oil and bleach. The money helped, marginally. I gave my parents most of what I earned, kept enough for bus fare and the occasional meal. We were still behind on rent. The electricity got shut off twice that summer. My mother's car died and we couldn't afford to fix it, so she started taking 2 buses to get to the houses she cleaned, adding hours to her already punishing days. I existed in a kind of numbness. Wake up, sleep poorly, work, come home, repeat. Music felt like it belonged to a different person, someone naive enough to believe that talent mattered, that trying would be rewarded. Reed tried to contact me throughout the summer. Texts at first, then calls I didn't answer, then showing up at my house. My mother let him in once before I made her promise never to do it again. He says he wants to apologize, she told me. I don't care what he wants. Ezra, maybe talking would help. Nothing will help. He tried to destroy me in front of everyone I knew because he thought it would be funny. What's there to talk about? She didn't push it after that. Sierra left for college in August. I saw the Facebook post her mother made about dropping her off at NYU. She looked happy in the photos, surrounded by new friends, starting fresh where nobody knew her as the girl who'd orchestrated that public humiliation. Must be nice, I thought. Starting over. I couldn't start over. I was stuck in Millbrook, working a dead-end job, watching my family sink deeper into poverty while my brain played the talent show disaster on repeat every time I closed my eyes. September came. I should have been a senior. Instead, I was working double shifts at Burger Haven and occasionally picking up day labor jobs, construction cleanup, moving furniture, anything that paid cash under the table. October brought the first serious conversation about our financial situation. We were sitting at the kitchen table, my father, my mother, and me, and the pile of bills between us was testament to how far behind we'd fallen. We might lose the house, my father said quietly. I've been trying to negotiate with the landlord, but he's not budging. We're 3 months behind on rent. I'll pick up more shifts, I said. You're already working 60 hours a week. Then I'll work 80. My mother was crying silently. I'd seen her cry before, but not like this. This was the crying of someone who'd run out of options. There might be another way, my father said carefully. There's a job opening at the warehouse, night supervisor position, pays better than what I make now. But they want someone young, someone who can work the physical side and manage the logistics. You want me to work at the warehouse, I said, understanding. Just until we get back on our feet, just until... It's fine, I cut him off. I'll take it. I started at the warehouse in November. The job was exactly as soul-crushing as expected. 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, managing a team of guys twice my age who resented taking orders from a kid. The money was better, $13.50 an hour, but it came at the cost of everything else. I had no time, no energy, no life beyond work and sleep. My hands, which had once created music, now operated machinery and lifted boxes and filled out inventory reports. Reed was attending community college. In Scranton, I heard through the small-town gossip network that persisted even in my isolation. He was taking theater classes, apparently, wanted to be an actor. Good for him, I thought with a bitterness that had calcified into something permanent in my chest. By Christmas we'd caught up on rent, barely. My mother cried again, but this time with relief. My father clapped me on the shoulder and told me I'd saved the family. I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt hollow. The new year came. I was now fully a year past the disaster, and nothing changed. Same job, same exhaustion, same sense that I'd somehow taken a wrong turn and ended up in someone else's life. My guitar still sat in the corner, untouched. Sometimes I'd look at it and feel a ghost pain in my chest, like missing a limb I'd chosen to amputate. Music was over. That part of my life was done. I'd tried, I'd failed, and now I was paying the price for believing I could be more than what I was. That's what I told myself. I almost believed it. The night Julian Fairmont walked into Burger Haven, I was cleaning the grill for the third time because my manager was on my case about maintaining standards. It was nearly closing time, well past midnight on a Tuesday in March, and the only customer we'd had in 2 hours had been a drunk guy who'd ordered water and then passed out in a booth. Julian didn't look like he belonged in Burger Haven. He was maybe 35, dressed in dark jeans and a leather jacket, and he had the kind of casual confidence that comes from having options. He ordered coffee, just coffee, and sat at the counter watching me work. "You're Ezra Crawford," he finally said. I froze mid-wipe on the grill surface. Nobody from my past life talked to me anymore. The social exile was complete. "Do I know you?" I asked carefully. "No, but I know you, or I know of you." He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and turned it to show me a video. My stomach dropped before I even saw what it was. The talent show, of course. "I don't want to talk about that," I said, turning back to the grill. "I was there that night," Julian said, ignoring my dismissal. "In the audience, I was visiting my sister. She teaches at your school. She invited me to the talent show, said it was a town tradition." "Great story. That'll be $2.50 for the coffee." "You didn't play, obviously, but I heard you. During sound check, hours before the show, you were running through your songs while the tech crew set up. I was early, wandering around, and I heard you through the auditorium doors." I stopped cleaning. "What?" "The Weight of Wings. That was the name, right?" Followed by Concrete Roots. "I stood outside those doors for 30 minutes listening to you rehearse, and I thought, that kid has something real." "You're mistaken. I'm not that person anymore." "Then who are you?" "I'm the guy cleaning grills at 1 a.m. That's who I am." Julian took a long sip of his coffee. "I'm a producer, independent, mostly digital releases, some soundtrack work. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that you have talent, real talent, the kind that doesn't disappear just because something went wrong. Thanks for the pep talk. I'll take it under advisement." "I looked for you," Julian continued, "after that night. I asked around, tried to find contact info, but you disappeared. Dropped out of school, went off the grid. Took me 18 months to track you down." "Why?" "Because I can't stop thinking about those songs. Because I hear hundreds of people who claim to be artists, and 99% of them are mediocre. You're the 1%, Ezra, and I think you know it." I wanted to tell him to leave. I wanted to say I wasn't interested, that he was wasting his time, that I'd moved on. But something in his certainty, in the casual way he stated what I'd stopped believing about myself, made me pause. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to produce you, record those songs properly, see what else you've got, build something. I don't have anything else. I haven't written or played in almost 2 years. Then start again." "Why would I do that? So I can fail publicly a second time?" "You didn't fail the first time," Julian said quietly. "You were sabotaged. There's a difference." We talked until 3 a.m., long past closing, sitting in that empty Burger Haven while I explained everything. Reed's betrayal, Sierra's breakdown, the video going viral, my family's financial collapse, the warehouse job. Julian listened without interrupting, his expression carefully neutral. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's a hell of an origin story," he finally said. "It's not a story, it's my life. Right now it is, but it doesn't have to be. Look, I'm not saying this will be easy. I'm not promising instant success or fame or revenge on the people who hurt you, but I am saying that you're talented enough that walking away would be a waste. And from what you've told me about your financial situation, you could use the income." "What income?" "Independent digital releases don't pay." "They do if you're good and we market it right. I'm talking streaming revenue, licensing opportunities, building a following. It's not warehouse money immediately, but it could be, eventually." I should have said no. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to protect myself, to not risk the stability I'd built, however miserable, on a maybe. But I was 19 years old, working a job I hated, watching my youth disappear into 12-hour shifts and family debt. And here was someone telling me that the thing I'd loved most, the thing I'd been forced to abandon, could still mean something. "I'll think about it," I told Julian. He handed me a business card. "That's all I ask. But Ezra, don't think too long. Talent has a shelf life, and you've already lost 2 years." He left. I finished closing the restaurant, drove home, and sat in my car outside my house holding his business card. The next day I called him. We started slowly. Julian had a small studio in Harrisburg, about an hour drive from Millbrook. I'd go there on Sundays, my only day off, and we'd work. At first I could barely play. My fingers had lost their muscle memory. My voice felt rusty, and the act of creating music again brought up all the trauma I'd been suppressing. "It's okay to be angry," Julian would say when I'd break down mid-song, frustrated by my own inadequacy. "Channel it. Use it." So I did. I wrote new songs, fueled by rage and betrayal and 2 years of working jobs that treated me like I was replaceable. I wrote about poverty that didn't look like the movies, about families held together by exhaustion and stubborn refusal to quit. I wrote about Reed and Sierra, though I never used their names. The songs were dark, bitter, raw in ways that made me uncomfortable. "Good," Julian said when I worried they were too angry. "Pretty sounds don't change lives. Honest sounds do." We recorded 3 songs that first summer. Nothing polished, just me and a guitar and whatever Julian could capture in his modest setup. He released them digitally in August under the name E. Crawford. My idea, wanting distance from my full name and the viral video, and I expected nothing to come of it. Then people started listening. Not many. Not at first, but the numbers ticked up slowly. 10 streams became 100, became 1,000. Comments appeared. "Who is this guy? These lyrics hit different. This feels real." Julian monitored the analytics obsessively. "You're building an audience," he'd say, showing me graphs I didn't understand. Slowly but genuinely. I kept working at the warehouse, but now I had something else. Sundays became sacred. I'd drive to Harrisburg, record, write, slowly remember who I had been before everything fell apart. My parents noticed the change. "You seem happier," my mother said one evening when I came home from a session. "I'm working on music again." "Is that safe after what happened?" "It's different this time. No performances, no audiences, just recording." She looked worried, but didn't push. My father said nothing, which was his way of saying he didn't approve, but wouldn't interfere. By the end of that year, I had 7 songs released and a small but growing following. The streaming revenue was tiny, maybe $300 a month, but it was something. Proof that the work mattered to someone besides me. Julian started talking about next steps. better equipment, professional mixing, maybe some live performances, small venues, controlled environments. I'm not performing in front of people, I told him. Not yet, but eventually. Not ever. We'll see. The transformation happened slowly enough that I didn't notice it was happening. 1 month bled into the next. Songs accumulated. Streaming numbers climbed incrementally. By the time I turned 21, I had released 15 tracks, built a modest following across several platforms, and started seeing comments from people who called themselves fans. It felt surreal. I was still working at the warehouse, couldn't afford to quit, not with my family depending on the steady income. But now I had this parallel existence. E. Crawford, the mysterious singer-songwriter who released raw, emotional tracks that seemed to speak to people experiencing their own versions of betrayal and survival. Julian pushed for more. Better production value, music videos, even simple ones, social media presence. You need to engage with your audience, he'd say. I engage through the music. That's enough. It's not. People want to know who you are. No, anonymity is the point. The music stands alone. We compromised. I created social media accounts under E. Crawford, but kept them minimal. Song, announcements, occasional lyrics posted as text, nothing personal. No photos, no biographical information, nothing that would connect me to Ezra Crawford from Millbrook, who'd been humiliated at a high school talent show. The strategy worked better than expected. The mystery became part of the appeal. Message boards speculated about who E. Crawford was, where the songs came from, what the lyrics meant. Some people guessed I was older, maybe in my 30s. Others thought I was a woman. A few theorized I was a collective rather than an individual. Let them wonder, I thought. The money improved. By the end of my second year working with Julian, streaming revenue had climbed to about $1,500 a month. Still not enough to quit the warehouse, but getting closer. I started doing licensing deals, small ones, my songs placed in independent films and podcasts that brought in additional income. You're building something sustainable, Julian told me. Slow growth is better than viral fame that disappears. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. One of my songs, Betrayal Economics, a track about the cost of trusting the wrong people, started gaining traction on TikTok. Not because I promoted it there, but because someone used 30 seconds of it in a video about toxic friendships, and the algorithm did its work. Suddenly, thousands of people were discovering the song, streaming the full version, commenting. You need to capitalize on this, Julian said. Post on TikTok, engage with the trend. No. Ezra, I said no. The song speaks for itself. I'm not performing my trauma for social media engagement. He backed off, but I could see his frustration. To him, I was leaving opportunity on the table. To me, I was protecting what little dignity I'd rebuilt. The TikTok momentum faded after a few weeks, but it left behind residual growth. My follower count increased. Streaming numbers stayed elevated. I'd crossed into a new tier of obscure but legitimate artists, people who made real music that real people cared about, even if we'd never fill stadiums. I turned 22. I'd been working with Julian for 3 years, had released 28 songs, and was finally making enough from music that I could reduce my warehouse hours. Not quit, my family still needed that stability, but scale back from 12-hour shifts to 8, giving me more time to write, record, and slowly build towards something I still couldn't quite define. My parents had stopped asking questions about the music. They saw the checks I deposited, watched me work with a focus I'd never shown at the warehouse, and apparently decided that as long as I was contributing financially, they wouldn't interfere. You're doing well, my father said one Sunday morning when I was heading to Harrisburg. It was the first time he'd acknowledged the music as anything legitimate. Thanks, I said, not knowing what else to say. Just be careful. I know you got hurt before. I'm not the same person I was at 17. I know. That's what worries me. He was right to worry. I'd become harder, more calculating, less interested in connection than in achievement. The music that flowed out of me was technically better than anything I'd written as a teenager, but it lacked warmth. It was sharp where it had once been vulnerable, angry where it had been hopeful. Julian noticed. "Your new stuff is good," he told me after hearing a demo of a song I'd tentatively titled "The Cost of Winning." "But it's cold, like you're keeping the listener at arm's length. Maybe that's the point. Maybe. But people connect with vulnerability, with humanity. They can connect with the music or not. I'm not here to make friends." That year, I played my first live performance since the talent show. Not a big venue, a small coffee shop in Harrisburg that Julian had connections with. Acoustic night, maybe 40 people in attendance. I used the name E. Crawford and didn't advertise it beyond the venue's social media. Standing on that tiny stage with my guitar, looking at 40 strangers who'd come to hear original music, I felt the old fear creep back. The memory of 600 people watching me dedicate songs to Sierra, the laughter that followed, the video that immortalized my humiliation. But this was different. These people didn't know me. They knew the music. And when I played Betrayal Economics, I watched faces in the audience respond, nods, closed eyes, a few people mouthing lyrics they'd memorized from streaming. They cared. Not about Ezra Crawford, victim of public humiliation, about E. Crawford, artist who'd turned pain into something they recognized in themselves. I played 3 more shows that year, each one slightly bigger, slightly more confident. The fear never disappeared, but it became manageable. A thing I carried rather than a thing that controlled me. By the time I turned 23, I'd released 35 songs, built a following of about 50,000 across platforms, and was making enough from music to quit the warehouse. My father didn't understand, thought I was making a mistake, but my mother defended me. "Let him try," she said. "He's earned that much." I gave my 2 weeks' notice. My last day at the warehouse, I walked out at midnight and sat in my car feeling simultaneously terrified and liberated. No more 12-hour shifts. No more inventory reports. Just music and whatever came next. Julian had ideas about what came next. "You're ready for bigger venues," he said. "Regional tours. Opening for established acts. Building beyond digital presence into actual fan base." Maybe. Not maybe. Definitely. You're good enough now. And you have material people want to hear live. So I started taking more gigs. Small clubs, opening slots, anywhere that would have me. I developed a stage presence that was minimalist and intense. No banter, no explanations, just song after song delivered with the controlled fury of someone who'd spent years transmuting pain into art. People responded. My shows started selling out. Not massive crowds, but full rooms. 200, 300 people who'd paid to hear me play. The money improved, not rock star money, but sustainable income. I could pay my share of family expenses and still have enough to live modestly. Julian talked about signing with a label, but I resisted. Independence felt safer, less potential for betrayal. I was 24 when I released my first full album. 12 songs, professionally produced, titled The Architecture of Revenge. Dark title, darker content. Every song about betrayal, survival, the slow accumulation of power from nothing. The album did well, not chart-topping, but solid numbers. Reviews were mostly positive, though some critics found it unrelentingly bitter and emotionally claustrophobic. Good, I thought. They got it. That's when I started hearing Reed's name, again. Reed Jameson had apparently made something of himself. I learned this not through direct contact, we hadn't spoken in 7 years, but through the peripheral awareness that comes from existing in the same general industry orbit. He'd gone the acting route after community college, moved to Philadelphia, took classes at some reputable program, started booking small roles in local theater productions. According to the social media breadcrumbs I found during a moment of weakness, he was charming, connected, and building the kind of career that depended more on who you knew than what you could do, which was very Reed. I didn't think much about it until Julian mentioned him casually during a planning session. "You know there's this actor Reed Jameson who's been talking about you?" Julian said, scrolling through his phone. My blood went cold. "What?" "Yeah, he did some interview for a Philadelphia arts magazine. Someone asked him about his influences, and he mentioned knowing you in high school. Said you were talented but troubled. Very carefully worded to make himself look like the supportive friend. Let me see." Julian handed me his phone. The article was typical actor puff piece. Reed looking dramatically lit in black and white photos, talking about his craft, his journey, his authenticity, buried in the middle. I actually went to high school with E. Crawford, though he performed under his real name back then. Incredibly talented musician, but he struggled with a lot of personal demons. I tried to support him, but sometimes people aren't ready to accept help. I'm glad he's found his voice now, even if the music is darker than what I remember. The casual rewriting of history was breathtaking. Reed positioning himself as the concerned friend, rather than the architect of my public humiliation. The implication that I was unstable, troubled, somehow at fault for what happened. "Want me to reach out to the magazine?" Julian asked. "Demand a correction?" "No, let him have his version. It doesn't matter." But it did matter, because Reed's careful PR was working. He was getting roles, building a reputation, creating a narrative where he was the good guy who tried to help his damaged friend. I channeled the rage into a new song. Historical Revision came out harsh and bitter, full of lyrics about people who rewrite their sins into supporting roles. I didn't mention Reed by name, but anyone who read that article and heard the song would make the connection. The song did well, better than well. It hit a nerve with people who'd experienced similar betrayals, who'd watched former friends reshape history to absolve themselves. Within a month, it had over 1 million streams, and Reed noticed. He didn't contact me directly. Instead, he gave another interview, this time to a larger publication, where he talked about how art comes from pain, and how he hoped I'd found peace with whatever I was working through. The patronizing tone was deliberate. The subtext was clear. I'm the stable, successful one. You're still angry about high school. Grow up. Julian wanted to fight back harder. I told him to wait. For what? He asked. For the right moment. Reed's playing a long game, so am I. My career continued its upward trajectory. I released another album, Compound Interest on Betrayal, that did even better than the first. Critics were starting to take me seriously. I got booked for festival slots, opened for established acts, built a reputation as the guy who wrote songs that felt like open wounds. I was performing at a venue in Pittsburgh, mid-size club, maybe 400 capacity, when I saw someone in the audience who looked familiar. It took me until the third song to place her. Noelle Osborne. She'd been 2 years behind me at Millbrook Regional, quiet kid who'd been in the art program. I remembered her vaguely, dark curly hair, paint-stained hands, always sketching in the margins of her notebooks. After the show, she approached me at the merch table. "Ezra Crawford," she said, and it was the first time in years someone had used my full name in public. "That's me. I'm surprised you remember me, Noelle Osborne. We went to Millbrook together." I remember. You drew that amazing mural in the art hallway, the one with the birds." She smiled, surprised I'd noticed. "That's the one. I'm an illustrator now, based in Pittsburgh." We talked for maybe 10 minutes. She was careful, clearly aware of my history, but not bringing it up directly. She mentioned loving my music, how it spoke to experiences she'd had, how it felt honest in a way most music didn't. "You want to get coffee sometime?" I asked, surprising myself. "Yeah," she said. "I'd like that." We started seeing each other. Casually at first, then more seriously. Noelle was different from Sierra in every meaningful way. Quiet where Sierra had been dramatic. Genuine where Sierra had been performative. Interested in my actual thoughts, rather than what I could do for her. "Why music?" she asked me during one of our early dates. "Because it's the only thing I'm good at." I don't believe that, but I meant, why do you keep doing it? After what happened? Because the people who tried to destroy me don't get to win. Because proving them wrong matters more than protecting myself from getting hurt again. She nodded like she understood. That's a lonely way to live. I know. But with Noelle, I felt slightly less lonely. She didn't fix me, nobody could do that. But she made the hardness in me feel less necessary. Made me remember that not everyone was Reed or Sierra, that trust hadn't died just because I'd been betrayed. My following grew. I hit 100,000 followers, then 200,000. Venues got bigger. Festival slots became headlining shows. The money improved from sustainable to actually good. And then, in the spring when I was 26, I got an offer I couldn't refuse. The Philadelphia Music Festival was one of those events that straddled the line between mainstream and indie credibility. Big enough to matter, small enough to feel authentic. Getting invited to perform was validation that I'd crossed from promising artist to established presence. Julian called with the news in March. "You're headlining the second stage," he said, barely containing his excitement. "Saturday night, 8 p.m. slot. This is huge, Ezra." "Who else is performing?" He rattled off a list of names. Most I recognized. Mid-level acts with solid followings. A few bigger names doing acoustic sets. Some up-and-comers trying to break through. "And there's an industry showcase component," Julian continued. "Producers, label scouts, booking agents. Everyone who matters will be there. This could open doors to the next level." "I don't want a label." "I know. But you want better tours, bigger venues, more opportunities. This gets you that." The festival was in 2 months. I spent the time refining my set, choosing songs that would hit hardest, practicing the kind of controlled intensity that had become my signature. Noelle came with me to Philadelphia. We drove down the day before, checked into a modest hotel, walked around the city feeling nervous and excited, and like something significant was about to happen. The festival occupied several blocks in the city's arts district. Multiple stages, food vendors, craft beer tents, the whole festival apparatus. The main stage featured the biggest names. The second stage, where I was performing, drew the serious music fans, the people who cared about discovering new artists. I did sound check in the late afternoon, running through 3 songs to test levels and get comfortable with the space. The sound engineer was professional, efficient. Everything felt ready. That's when I saw him. Reed Jameson, standing in the VIP area behind the soundboard, talking to a woman I vaguely recognized from industry photos. He looked good, well-dressed, confident, laughing at something she said. He'd aged well, still had that easy charm that made people want to be around him. He saw me at the exact moment I saw him. His expression flickered through surprise, calculation, and then settled on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He raised a hand in greeting. I turned away and finished sound check. "Who was that?" Noelle asked. She'd been watching from the side of the stage. Nobody important. Ezra. Someone from my past. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. Reed being here, at this specific event, on this specific day, it wasn't coincidence. He'd known I was performing. He'd come deliberately. I found out why an hour before my set. Julian came to the green room, looking agitated. "We have a problem," he said. "What kind of problem?" "Reed Jameson has been talking to producers. Specifically, he's been suggesting they shouldn't work with you." My hands went still on my guitar. "What?" He's being subtle about it, framing it as concern, saying you're difficult, unstable, that your anger issues make you risky to work with. Classic whisper campaign. And people are listening? Some are. Others are pushing back, but he's got connections here, and he's using them. I felt the old rage building, the kind that had fueled years of songs about betrayal and revenge. Reed was still trying to sabotage me, still operating from the same playbook he'd used at 17. The only difference was now he had industry credibility to weaponize. "How do you want to handle this?" Julian asked. I looked at Noelle, who was watching me with that careful expression that meant she was trying to gauge how I'd react. "I handle it by doing what I came here to do," I said. "I perform. I show everyone in that audience and everyone watching from the industry why Reed's version of events is bullshit. The music speaks louder than his whispers, and if that's not enough, then it's not enough. But I'm not playing his game. I'm playing mine." The hour before my set crawled by. I could hear the previous act finishing up, the crowd's energy building. Noelle sat with me in silence, occasionally squeezing my hand, not trying to fix anything, because she understood there was nothing to fix. At 7:55 p.m., I walked to the side of the stage. I could see the crowd, maybe 2,000 people, larger than any audience I'd performed for before. I could see Reed in the VIP section, still talking to industry people, still working his charm. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Please welcome to the second stage, E. Crawford." I walked out to applause that felt like validation. I took my position center stage, adjusted the mic, let the noise settle, then I spoke. "Before I start," I said, and my voice carried across the crowd with a clarity that surprised me, "I want to thank some people. Specifically, I want to thank Reed Jameson and Sierra Linton, who taught me the most valuable lesson I've ever learned about trust, ambition, and the long game." The crowd went quiet. In the VIP section, I could see Reed's face go pale. 9 years ago, I continued, these two people orchestrated my public humiliation in front of 600 people. They planned it carefully, my best friend and my girlfriend working together to destroy me on stage, in front of my entire school, as a joke they thought would be funny. I could feel the audience leaning in, hungry for the story. Reed thought it would be hilarious to watch me dedicate songs to a girl who'd already betrayed me. Sierra went along with it until her conscience kicked in mid-execution. The whole thing got filmed, went viral, followed me for years. It destroyed my relationship with music, with trust, with the idea that trying could lead to anything but humiliation. Reed was moving through the VIP section, trying to leave. I kept talking. But here's what they didn't understand. Here's what people like Reed and Sierra never understand. When you take everything from someone, their dignity, their passion, their belief in humanity, you give them something incredibly dangerous. You give them nothing left to lose. I started playing the opening chords to Betrayal Economics. I spent 9 years rebuilding, working jobs that destroyed my body and soul, recording in basements and cheap studios, building an audience one song at a time, while Reed was taking acting classes and learning how to rewrite history to make himself look good, while Sierra was starting fresh at some expensive college, leaving the wreckage behind. The song built underneath my words, the familiar progression that had become almost meditative. Reed's here tonight, actually, in the VIP section, or he was. He spent the last few hours telling producers and agents not to work with me, spreading the same kind of careful lies he's been telling for 9 years, positioning himself as the concerned friend, me as the unstable artist still hung up on high school. I could see industry people looking around, trying to spot Reed, piecing together the story. So Reed, wherever you are right now, this set is dedicated to you. Every song is about what you tried to do and how completely you failed. Every lyric is about the fact that destroying someone's life at 17 doesn't make you powerful. It makes you the villain in someone else's origin story. I launched into the song fully, and the crowd erupted. The energy in that moment was electric, a mixture of righteous anger and cathartic recognition. I performed for 90 minutes straight, every song chosen to build the narrative: betrayal, survival, slow accumulation of power, the cold satisfaction of being proven right. When I finished the final song, The Architecture of Revenge, the crowd gave me a standing ovation that lasted 3 minutes. I walked off stage soaking in sweat and adrenaline, feeling simultaneously triumphant and hollow. Backstage, Julian was grinning. "Every producer in that audience just became very interested in you," he said. "Reed's Whisper campaign is officially dead. You killed it." Noel hugged me tight. That was intense. Too intense? No, honest, which is scarier. The rest of the night was a blur of industry people wanting to talk. Reed nowhere to be seen. Social media exploding with clips of my dedication and speculation about the backstory. By morning, the video had gone viral. Not the humiliation this time, but the revenge. The payoff. Within a week, I had offers from 3 labels, booking requests from venues I'd only dreamed of playing, interview requests from music publications that had previously ignored me. Reed gave one interview trying to defend himself, claiming I'd misrepresented what happened, that it was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But the internet is unforgiving, and people found the original talent show. Video connected the dots, decided Reed was exactly the villain I'd painted him as. His acting career didn't collapse overnight. These things never do, but the momentum stopped. Roles dried up. The industry connections that had seemed so solid revealed themselves as conditional. People didn't want to be associated with the guy who'd orchestrated that kind of calculated cruelty. Sierra sent me an email 3 days after the festival. I almost didn't open it. "Ezra, I know I have no right to contact you. I know what Reed and I did was unforgivable. I've spent 9 years trying to forgive myself and failing. Watching your performance, hearing you tell everyone what we did, was the most shame I've felt since that night. I deserved every word. I just wanted you to know that you were right. We did destroy you. But you were also right that you rebuilt into something we could never touch. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter, but I'm sorry." Sierra, I deleted it without responding. She wanted absolution I wasn't capable of giving. The year after Philadelphia was a whirlwind. I signed with an independent label that gave me creative control, but provided better distribution and marketing support. I toured nationally, playing venues that held thousands instead of hundreds. The Architecture of Revenge was re-released with the label's backing and climbed actual charts. I was successful. Objectively, measurably successful in ways that would have seemed impossible 9 years ago when I was working warehouse shifts and thinking music was dead to me. Reed's career didn't die, but it stagnated. He still got occasional theater roles, still worked in Philadelphia's arts scene, but the upward momentum stopped. The whispers about what he'd done, not my account but the original video, now recontextualized and circulating again, followed him. Casting directors knew. Producers knew. Everyone knew. I heard through industry gossip that he'd tried to pivot to writing, then to producing, always chasing the next opportunity that might rebuild what he'd lost, always failing to gain real traction because reputation in creative industries is everything, and his was permanently tainted. Sierra disappeared from public view. Her social media went private. The last I heard, she'd moved back to Pennsylvania and was working some office job, having given up on whatever dreams she'd chased to NYU. The girl who'd broken up with me to avoid drama had become defined by it. My parents were proud in their reserved way. They came to see me perform at a venue in Harrisburg, mid-sized theater, sold-out crowd, and watching them watch me from the audience, I could see them trying to reconcile this person with the kid who'd fled from Burger Haven at closing time. "You did it," my mother said afterward, hugging me in the parking lot. "Did what?" "Became who you were supposed to be, despite everything." My father was quieter. "Just don't forget where you came from," he said. "Don't let success make you cruel." Too late, I thought, but didn't say. Noelle and I moved to Philadelphia together. She was getting illustration work for children's books and magazines, building her own career alongside mine. We got a small apartment in a neighborhood that was gentrifying, but not yet gentrified. Made a life that was equal parts art and ambition. "Do you feel like you won?" she asked me one night. We were lying in bed, and I'd just gotten back from a show that had gone well, that had felt like another validation in an endless string of validations. "I don't know. I accomplished what I set out to do. Reed's influence is gone. Sierra knows what she cost me. I am successful beyond anything I imagined at 17. But I'm not the person I would have been if none of this had happened. That person died at the talent show. This person," I gestured at myself, "is what grew in his place. And I'm not sure that's better." "Would you go back, if you could, to before the betrayal, to being naive enough to trust people?" "Yes." I thought about it, really thought. "No, because that person would have been destroyed eventually anyway. Reed just did it efficiently. At least this way I learned early." Noelle was quiet for a long moment. "That's really sad, Ezra." "I know." 2 years after Philadelphia, I released my third album. Pyrrhic Victory was the title. Julian hated it, thought it was too on the nose, but I insisted, and it was my most successful yet. Top 50 on the Billboard charts. Actual radio play. Reviews in major publications. I was 28 and had achieved everything I'd worked for. I could sell out venues in major cities. I had fans who knew every lyric, who'd gotten tattoos of my song titles, who told me my music had saved them. I made more money than my parents had ever seen, enough to pay off their debts, buy them a house, give them security they'd never had. I should have been happy. Instead, I felt like I was performing a role. The successful artist who overcame betrayal. The underdog who proved everyone wrong. Every interview followed the same pattern. Talk about the talent show, talk about Reed, talk about the slow climb back. Reduce my entire existence to revenge, narrative, and redemption arc. "You need to write about something else," Julian told me after hearing demos for potential album 4. "Your fans are ready for evolution." "They're fans of the revenge," I said. "That's the brand." "You're not a brand, you're a person, and people need more than one story." But I didn't have another story. The betrayal had happened when I was 17, and I was now 28, and every significant thing in my life since then had been defined by it. I'd become exactly what I set out to become. Successful, vindicated, impossible to ignore. And I was fucking miserable. Noelle saw it before I did. "You're not present anymore," she told me one night. "You're here physically, but mentally you're still at that talent show, still fighting Reed, still trying to prove something to people who don't matter." They matter to the music. The music is eating you alive. You've written 3 albums about the same wound, and you won't let it heal, because healing means letting go of the anger that fuels everything. Without the anger, what do I have? You have me. You have the life we're building. You have the fact that you're genuinely talented, that people would listen to you even if you wrote about something besides betrayal. You don't know that. I do know that, but you won't risk finding out because staying angry is safer than being vulnerable again. We broke up 3 months later. Mutual decision, mature conversation, both of us knowing that I wasn't capable of being the partner she deserved. She moved to New York for a better job opportunity. I stayed in Philadelphia, alone in the apartment that suddenly felt too big. I turned 29, released. Album 4, Interest on Grief, to respectable sales and reviews that were starting to say things like, E. Crawford's formula is wearing thin, and how many songs about high school betrayal can one person write? More than you'd think, apparently. I performed at a festival in Austin and saw someone in the crowd who looked like Sierra. My heart stopped for a full beat before I realized it wasn't her, just someone with similar features. The fact that I'd reacted that way, that 9 years and 3 albums of revenge couldn't kill the residual fear, told me everything I needed to know about whether I'd actually won. I was sitting in a hotel room after that Austin show, alone, scrolling through messages from fans telling me how my music had helped them, how it spoke to their pain, how I'd given voice to their anger, and I thought about my father's warning years ago, don't let success make you cruel. I'd let it make me something worse than cruel. I'd let it make me permanent. Frozen at 17, playing out the same trauma on repeat, calling it art, calling it healing, calling it anything except what it was, refusal to move forward. My phone rang. Julian. We got an offer for you to headline a major festival next summer, he said. Biggest stage, top billing. This is everything we've worked toward. Great, I said, and meant it. I would headline that festival. I would perform those songs. I would watch crowds sing back lyrics about betrayal and revenge, and I would still feel nothing. Ezra, you there? Yeah, I'm here. Tell them yes. After we hung up, I sat in that hotel room, looking at my guitar. Different from the one I'd used at 17, but functionally the same. An instrument for transmuting pain into something useful. I thought about Reed Jameson, wherever he was now, probably still chasing opportunities that kept slipping away. I thought about Sierra, living some quiet life, far from the spotlight we'd both touched for different reasons. I thought about Noelle, who'd seen what I'd become and chosen her own happiness over trying to fix me. They'd all moved on, changed, grown into different people than they'd been at 17. Only I was still there, still angry, still building career and success and achievement on top of that single wound, afraid that if I let it heal, I'd have nothing left. I picked up the guitar and played the opening chords to The Weight of Wings, the song I'd written for the talent show, the song I'd never performed that night. I played it all the way through, and it sounded different now. Less desperate, more resigned. The lyrics about dreams feeling impossible had become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I won, I thought. I destroyed Reed's influence, proved Sierra wrong, built success from nothing, showed everyone that I was better than they believed, and it changed me into something I didn't recognize, something cold and calculating and permanently damaged in ways that success couldn't fix. I finished the song and sat in silence. Tomorrow I'd fly home. Next week I'd start writing album 5, probably titled something equally bleak. Next month I'd perform at another venue for another crowd who'd cheer for another performance of my trauma. I'd keep winning, keep achieving, keep proving, and I'd keep being the person the 17-year-old betrayed kid had built to survive. Not the person he might have become if things had been different. Not the person who could write about joy or love or hope without feeling like a fraud. Just this: the architecture of revenge, standing tall, permanent, impossible to tear down, even though the foundation was grief and the blueprint was pain. I set the guitar aside and turned off the lights. I'd won, and I'd lost everything that mattered. That was the cost nobody mentioned when they talked about success built on betrayal. The price wasn't failure. The price was becoming exactly what you set out to become and realizing, too late, that the person who made that decision was scared and hurt and should never have been trusted with designing the rest of your life. But I was stuck with it now. Stuck with this persona, this career, this carefully constructed existence built on refusing to heal. Reed had tried to destroy me at 17. I had finished the job myself, slowly, successfully, one song at a time. The room was dark and silent, and I was alone, and I was successful, and I was exactly who I'd decided to be, and that was the worst punishment of all. Stories like this happen more often than we think. Subscribe if you want to hear the ones that usually stay unspoken. And if this story made you pause, a like helps the channel grow.